18-year-old Nico Craig is a DJ, producer, and the youth ambassador for the Human Rights Campaign. Nico is also on the journey of transitioning from a female to male and documents this journey on social media. Life as a DJ ain't easy, and Nico joins Peaks and Valleys to talk about it right now.
They say it is the darkest before the dawn. But what do you do before the dawn comes when all you have is candles and night lights guiding your path until morning, until your sight is restored and you can see your way out, your way through, your way to the other side. You push with all your might until the day breaks and your victory comes. This is Peaks and Valleys with TK Trinidad.
So in the studio, we have DJ producer Nico Craig. I am so blown away by him, like such an amazing journey, and we're going to get into it. But let's just talk about the moment in your life where, stuff wasn't going right and how you came through.
Yeah, so I think when stuff wasn't, I guess to refer to the time when stuff wasn't feeling right, I guess is definitely when I was pre-testosterone and I'm so for those who don't know, I'm a trans man and I began my transition about 2 months ago. I began my transition on January 21st is actually the day that I took my first testosterone shot. But prior to that, I was feeling just like really out of place and I mean literally out of body because I just didn't feel grounded or connected fully in the ways that I really wanted to be. Like I found myself grounded in other areas that probably didn't take that much effort or probably didn't take that much time or any sort of like drastic change. But I still didn't find I just still wasn't comfortable, and I had to really teach myself and like really convince myself that it is okay to be selfish. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's something that my mom has always told me growing up. But it was really hard for me to believe it because I just didn't feel that way, in my body. Like I just felt like the way I wanted to be perceived in the world did not line up. And that is what caused that sort of, that pressure, you know what I mean? That there's a lot of pressure that arises when we feel out of place and when we feel discomfort, when we don't feel seen, when we don't feel perceived in the ways that we want to be perceived. And so that was like really when I hit a really low point, and I began just living my life practically through in the eyes through other people and through their perspectives rather than my own. And I wouldn't challenge other people, you know what I mean? I wouldn't challenge them for the way they saw me or the way they addressed me or whatever it was. And sometimes I would literally just leave it up to everyone else in my life and everyone else around me and in my environment to make certain decisions for me, or to just
Right.
you know what I mean? Like I would just kind of give up, and I would just I was not taking control of my life. And so what I did to get through that was I really just had to sit in it. I had to sit in it, and I had to understand how I felt and what that meant for me, in order for me to pretty much put my finger on it and be like, okay, this is not okay.
Right.
Because the first step to overcoming anything is knowing what is happening and knowing your surroundings and being aware of, you know what I mean, of the present, you know what I mean, being in the present moment. Because I was so concerned about the future or my past, but I was not living in the present. And so it was hard for me to even put my finger on where the areas that I felt like I wasn't thriving in, that was just put on the back burner. So
Right.
how I got over that was just sitting in it, really.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, because you kind of scrubbed your social media, but I'm going to bring it up just a little bit. For people who don't know, Nico is very accomplished. So I met Nico when I was working at the radio station. At the time, Nico was a young lady, amazing DJ. For the Obamas. So that's the thing. You've done so much at a young age. It's easy for people to just put their their claim on you and say that, well, this is what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, there are some pictures on your social media when, like, because I follow you, where you just like, you're doing all this amazing stuff, but you didn't look happy. You're like, all right, I'm in this part of the world, but
yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's so amazing. So now, just to bring everybody up to speed, you know, the world shut down. And essentially what I saw just looking at your social media is that you decided, you know, becoming a man is what you want to do. Or is it,
Yeah.
or so I'm gonna, like, I'm full disclosure, I'm not completely ignorant, but I'm gonna ask these questions and please
Of
answer them for me.
course. I
So
welcome them. Yeah.
yeah, so the question is, because I believe Dwayne Wade's
Yes.
son,
Zaya.
right? So the question
Yeah.
is, this is something
Trans
that you
daughter.
always trans daughter. Now, is this something that you always felt inside, or is this like, how did the process happen for you?
So, I mean, I feel like the process, um, well, because I think what a lot of people really, to even start is like, or to even answer that question, I guess, uh, it would be, what does the process even consist of? You know what I mean? Or does it necessarily have to be a process? Because I feel like if one thing, now that I've been on testosterone for 2 months, I feel like if anything, and I thought the same thing, like, it's a process, but it really isn't, honestly. It's like it's just an everlasting experience that I'm just in. You know what I mean? I don't
Mhm.
necessarily know. I think what a lot of people sometimes believe when they see trans people, when we see trans people like openly transitioning, especially since we've known them like before their transition as well.
Right.
It's easy, like you said, for a lot of people to like to only it's easy for them to overlook certain to overlook certain qualities of that person's transition, because they are not the person that's transitioning, and that's
Right.
fine. You know what I mean? Like, and I think as trans people, we have to not hold other people accountable for things that they don't have knowledge about. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because i can't tell you that I can't tell you too many things about what it means to be trans, because for as long as I'm living, I'm going to have a new experience. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Or an evolving, everlasting experience. And so, I guess the process is more like it's just it's really the moment you decide to live authentically. It's really the moment you
Mhm.
decide to switch your mentality and the way you think, and the moment you decide to challenge yourself. Because a lot of times when I was pre-T, pre-testosterone, I didn't really, it was hard for me to believe, like, or actually no, it was easier for me to believe that my life was going to be fine, because I was not the person living my life. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
was living as someone that did not care what I thought. I cared what other people thought of me.
Right.
Before I asked myself, I would ask other people about how they felt before I asked myself how I would feel about certain things. And I would let people
Mhm.
walk all over me. And I led myself to believing that that was okay. And that how, like, I was going to get by. I would have nothing to worry about. And I think the moment it hits you, like the moment it hits you where it's like, oh damn, like I've actually been living like this before, like all my life, and it's
Mhm.
been affecting me in these ways. And now that you can like see that, it kind of breaks down, like, okay, what would be like, oh, the process, or what would be like the next steps to take. You know what I mean? And for some people, that could be, for some trans people like myself, that could be starting hormones, that could be moving out,
Mhm.
that could be posting more on social media, that could be
Right.
changing a diet, like that could be literally anything for that person. You know what I mean? And um yeah, so that's honestly what it's been like for me. Is my process has just been like taking my time and like learning how to walk and learn. Right now I'm like kind of in the crawling stage, where I'm like,
Right.
okay, like I'm actually aware of myself, I'm aware of the body that I'm in, I'm aware of, like, you know what I mean, like I can actually tangibly exist as Nico, you know, as me,
Right.
as the person I've always felt like I've always been. But um you know, I was not in a place before to do that because of the mindset that I had at the time. And it was really like it was really just like kind of a switch when I noticed that, you know, I was not happy and I was not fulfilled. It was like a night and day difference.
Right.
So
So is a moment in your life, was it like before the pandemic, during the pandemic, where you're just like, I need to stop pleasing others because I'm not feeling good. I'm not, because I've been there before where it's just like you're doing everything for everybody else, but you're almost like empty inside. Like you can't
yeah, that's exactly
pour
what
out
it feels like. That is exactly what it feels like. And you know what? And honestly, like because I feel like a part of this, I think personally, the most important part of a person's transition, or my transition, because we're talking about my transition, uh, the most important part of my transition is how it was before I started. Honestly, is what I'm starting to notice because a lot of the things that I thought I needed to change, I did not need to change about myself. If
Mhm.
anything, I just needed to amplify them. But I chose to, you know, bury those and like be resentful about it and be, you know, and just withhold all of these negative feelings and emotions that could be tied to anxiety or could be tied to fear or could be
Mhm.
tied to, you know, sadness. And so when I'm noticing like where certain things are stemming from, which obviously like I would have to be very privy of my past, you know, before I started transitioning. Because you can't necessarily just like kill that part off, you know what I
Right.
mean? And that's the one thing I've noticed, and I think I've tried to do that. Like I've tried to do that before, but it lands me nowhere, you know? Like I've spent my life trying to kill off like this side of me that I felt has been amplified, when in reality I've been the only person that's been amplifying it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, you're the same
So
person.
yeah, and right, same person, you know what I mean? So it's it's like, because I noticed that other people, like when I first started socially transitioning, because I remember you go through a period in your transition where like, I mean, and then you know, it varies for other people because other people transition differently. Like everyone has different rates, and everyone transitions
Right.
differently. Like it's not like
A one size fit all type thing.
no, it definitely is not. You know, like some people transition and don't have to be on hormones. Like some people transition and they don't like come out until they're on hormones. Like
Mhm.
some people really, like, you know what I mean? But for me, in my case, like I went through a period of socially transitioning, meaning I had to transition socially without the influence of hormones on my
Right.
body. So that was all like through connection, through communication, through, you know, engagement with people. And
Mhm.
when your like identity, when I guess when you feel like the only way you're going to know yourself better is by putting yourself out there, it can be very scary.
Right. No,
It could be
social
super
media is,
scary. Yeah,
and
and that's what creates that facade sometimes for people to feel like they're giving to so
right.
many other people. But it's like you said, like you hit a point where it's like you're tired of that. You know what I mean? It's like you just you hit a wall, and you have to make a decision. Okay, am I going to get up or am I going to stay here, and then figure out how I'm going to get up when I can, you
That's
know? So
and that's where, like, that's perfect transition. So like the point where you're like, this is what I'm gonna do.
mhm.
Or did you come to that, or did you feel comfortable within yourself first and then
Mm.
say, these are my options and this is the option I choose? Or how did you decide to start doing the testosterone?
Yeah, so I remember when I was let's see, I was in like middle school, and I remember like in middle school was when I learned about like the term like pansexual, because I made a friend, her name is AJ. She's a great friend of mine, and we've been friends since, she's honestly like one of the oldest friends I have.
Mhm.
But she's pansexual, and once I understood, like once I became friends with her, I was like, huh. So I'm realizing that, like the world is not so small. Like the world is not so small, and like everything is not so like black and white. And so
Right.
I really, like I started pretty much like immersing myself into like other, like gender identity. What did that mean for me? Like what significance did
Mhm.
it play in my life? How was I being perceived? You know what I mean? And once I kind of put two and two together, it took for me to actually it took for me to realize that because I never liked my body, but I thought that was normal, because
Right.
people, it's normal to have insecurity. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with having insecurity because we all have them. Um, but I think I knew testosterone was like the thing for me when I guess, or yeah, I knew that that was what I wanted to do when I started to see, like, I don't want to say I saw other people's happiness and then like thought that that was like the thing for me, because just because other people are happy with testosterone and the results, it doesn't necessarily mean that that could be true uh
Right.
for anyone, because like everyone is different, and like genetically that's a whole other conversation too. But like I think I knew testosterone was the thing for me because I just never felt comfortable in my body. Like I never felt comfortable in my body, and I knew that if it were to, as it was progressing, like as I was
Mhm.
going through my stages of puberty as a female, as being biologically female, I I don't I just didn't I was not happy with the I knew I was just not happy with the results, and I couldn't
Right.
see myself in the future being happy with those results. So I knew from that moment forth, I was like, okay, um I got to do something about it. So if that meant I needed to change the clothes I wear, then I would do that. If I
Right.
had to bind, I would do that. And I still do bind because I have not had top surgery yet. But, testosterone was like, I think I, I, I knew that when I began puberty as being assigned female at birth, I wasn't happy with that. And you know what I mean? Like I think I didn't have to think twice to know that I wasn't okay with my body. And I think
Right.
because of that, I knew from that day forward, I was like, okay, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what this means to me, but like I know eventually there's like something's gonna have to change. And then once I stumbled across like trans men who have openly transitioned on the internet, like there's so many trans people out there who have like put their stories out there, and they're so
Mhm.
inspiring, and seeing them live in their truth, and like all like seeing the happiness on their faces and all that, like that just really really inspired me to do the same. And
Yeah.
here I am, and I've been on T, and it honestly, I'm still adjusting to it. Of course, I'm always going to be adjusting to it, but it's been one hell of a journey. It's been very very life changing. So
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously you're going through the journey, but just seeing, I don't know, like I'm watching your journey and it's just like it to be authentically you, and or like at such a young age just saying this is what I'm going to do and this is how
yeah.
I'm going to operate. Like that's an amazing feeling. And as far as that, because you were in the limelight, and you were in the industry, how was that? Like first off, yeah, I mean, I have a feeling I know what your mom, how your mom's involved, but first off, like tell like
Mhm.
first family, and then the people around you, and then the industry, how did they
Mhm.
operate when you decided to make this transition?
Yeah. So let's see. Where do I start? I think. Well, I will say that like all sectors of my life have been impacted by my transition. Definitely. You know what I mean? Like family, work. All of that. Like school, everything has changed due to my transition. And like because I'm in the middle, because I'm stuck in the middle of all the action of what this transition has been like for the past 2 months so far.
Mhm.
um it's never going to be there's never going to be a moment where, or there's pretty much never going to be a dull moment, like in any sector of my life, because all eyes are just on me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's pretty much whether people are, whether people have known about my transition, um, you know, for 2 months, or for ever since I came out, or
Mhm.
even, they could be, or it could be someone who's not aware that I'm trans, but they just know me. Like,
Right.
there's so many different like aspects and angles that come from, like business and working and like my family, and like how how I connect with my audience, like everyone on social media. So I think um it sometimes can feel like I'm juggling a lot of stuff, because it's like if I'm not focusing on one thing, I know I'm focusing on the
Right.
other. I mean, so it can be a little, sometimes it could be very challenging to kind of like to oversee everything, and to sort of like micromanage like all of those other parts of my life as I'm transitioning, because you kind of have to ask yourself, like, other people have different priorities, other people have um different needs, different wants, different aspirations, like
Mhm.
I noticed that um I really had to be okay with the fact that producing music wasn't going to be like, it wasn't going to serve me if I wasn't like, if I wasn't enjoying it as Nico. If I was
Right.
enjoying it as someone else, then it wasn't going to fulfill me.
Right.
So I really had to like prioritize, excuse me, I had to really prioritize my transition and my health and like uh my wellness, and like I really had to take control and like take control and grab it by the reins and say, okay, this is what we're doing, because if I want to get here, I know I'm gonna have to do A, B, and C. So let me make sure I take everything step by step and do everything cautiously, graciously, and not like try to like jump into anything
Right.
like completely like some sort of uncharted territory, because I've I've been in so many scenarios where before I transitioned, I would get booked for gigs that weren't necessarily like, they just weren't me. You know what I mean? And I'm not
Mhm.
gonna say, I'm not gonna say what those who that, because I'm not gonna put dirt. It's definitely not like putting dirt on anyone, because I can't blame someone. I can't blame someone for not knowing that.
Exactly.
I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I can't blame someone, but um at the same time, now I know that, okay, it's up to me to change the way I am I can do that. Like, I
Right.
know that I can't necessarily change the way people think, but I know I can change like what it is I'm giving to people. I know I can do that. I know I can be myself, at least, or I can or I can at least provide some inspiration for someone to maybe come to terms with something about themselves, because
Yeah.
ever since I've transitioned, there have been so many people that I've been able to talk to, that have reached out to me, and it's so crazy once you realize how much, like, we're not that different, you know what I mean, from each other. We're really not that different, like, just
Mhm.
everyone, and I
We
think
all
I
believe
think
the
like,
same way.
yeah, we really, yeah, for real. And once we understand like just how we relate to one another, like in that way, and once there's like a sense of comfortability that's established, like between you and someone else, whether it be like working, or family, or social media, or whatever, like whatever it is, that really is like kind of the answer to it, is really just like just putting yourself out there and like being in that like comfortable space. Um and
So
everything
essentially,
else will kind of just like fall into place, honestly, because that's what it's been like for me. Like, I
yeah.
wouldn't be able to have a lot of these things if I didn't just like put on my big boy pants and say, you know what, I'm just going to be authentic, and I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to be honest with people, and I'm just not going to be apologetic, for anything, because
Right.
I'm not trying to be on this earth to be sorry. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to
Yeah.
challenge myself. I want other people to feel like they can learn and grow and challenge themselves too. Because I want the world would be such a better place if we all had that mentality. Like,
Right.
imagine the potential we can like we can unleash. You know what I mean? So, yeah. In
So
a
essentially,
nutshell,
yeah. So essentially,
yeah.
you're just saying like, I mean, career wise, you got to you were at a certain level, and you know
Mm-hmm.
people saw you at this level, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna be authentically me. It's like your talent hasn't changed.
Nope.
You know, all that stuff hasn't changed, so that's gonna be there. Let me
Mm-hmm.
get myself together, and then essentially all that other stuff is gonna enhance.
Right.
And you know
Right.
that's the best way to live. Now, before we get out of here, one last thing. Can you please explain the they and the them? Like, how do
Yes.
you go about what should an individual do, and how do you explain
Mm.
the they and them?
Okay. So the pronouns they them are used to describe are used to address trans people and non-binary people, or it could be anyone on the gender diverse spectrum. Really anyone on the spectrum of gender can be addressed as they them. It's just
Mhm.
simply preference, and it's up to how they want to be addressed. So um yeah, so they them. So where do I start? Yes, so they them. It originates from a non-binary identity,
Mhm.
and non-binary meaning you don't identify as male or female, or you can identify as both male or female, or it's really just non-binary is just lack of gender, pretty much is how I see
Okay.
non-binary. That's how I define it. You know, other people define non-binary. You know, like specifically tailored to their experiences and how they want to be perceived. But for
Mhm.
me, I think non-binary is like I think it's something it's an identity where there is there is there is no um there's like a sway of gender or lack thereof, or you
Right.
know it can be it's just basically a freedom of gender expression, I think, is what
So
non-binary is. So
so as a
yeah.
person meeting somebody who's not quite sure, the best
hmm
way to go is they and them.
let's see. I think, well, no, the best way to approach it is just to ask, really. You can just ask
Okay.
someone like what they're I tell people all the time, like and any like most trans people will tell you, um trans people, like, it's okay to ask, you know, it's okay to ask, like, if you don't know something, it's okay to say you don't know something. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And like I think as long as everyone knows that, like, that's honestly the best way to approach it is just with honesty and with respect and like with maybe just a little bit of empathy.
Mhm.
Because I think sometimes it can cause a lot of social anxiety for trans people when um you know when it's kind of like we're expected to some people sometimes expect for trans people to just like inform them right off the bat, and sometimes
Right.
that's not necessarily, you know, that's not always the case. And so the best thing to do is just to ask for someone's pronouns. So like if you ever, like, if someone, because honestly, don't get me wrong, because we all honestly, it's not a bad thing to assume someone is non-binary, because honestly non-binary being non-binary is honestly one of the most like highly anticipated like forms of expression when it comes to pop culture and when it comes
Mhm.
to like the media. Like LGBTQ plus people exist and have and we have so much influence. So it's not the worst thing in the world to assume that someone might like look, you know, like they might
Right.
look more um like they might look more fluid, they might look more gender fluid, they might present more, or they might present more of something, or they might have like a lack thereof. You know what I mean?
Right.
It all depends on like our perception of that person. So you know, it's like it's okay to ask. So I would just say ask. Just ask someone what their pronouns
Ask
are,
first.
and yeah. And if
And
someone asks, because oh, and I just wanted to clarify too, because some people when a lot of times what happens is like I've been in situations where I've asked someone for their pronouns, and then they'll be like, "Why are you asking me for my pronouns?" And then I'm like, "So okay." So then I have to like explain it to them
that's
too.
that's what I want to
But
avoid. I'm just like, but I completely agree with you. Like, if you don't know something, just ask. And then the thing is, for people who are watching this and, they might be, embarking on a similar journey or just in life in general, what one sentence would you say to them to encourage them to keep pushing, keep moving on?
I would say, let's see, one sentence. Don't be hard on yourself. Do not be hard on yourself is what I would say.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I'm just blown away just by the work ethic, the journey, and I'm just so looking forward to see, what's going to be happening coming up with you.
Peaks and Valleys is produced by Josh Rodriguez and TKO Productions. Spoken word and voiceover is done by yours truly, Lem Gonzalez. Thank you for listening, and remember, after the darkness comes the dawn.